Welcome everybody to a GoldenDudez anticipated releases for the month of February 2021. My name is Nick.
And I'm Mike.
A quick rundown for anticipated releases. We're going to talk about some of the game releases coming up for the month of February and, say what we're excited about and also kind of what we're maybe fearful of. Just pretty much giving our overall thoughts about games that we want to see either do well or maybe in the off chance do bad. But actually, I want to start this one off, Mike. Sorry, I never get to start. So I'm actually going to start with, going to go a couple rapid fire really quick. The first one I'm going to talk about is Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury. And as me and Mike quickly talked about before starting recording, we really have no idea what the heck Bowser's Fury is. There's speculation over what it is, but nobody really knows. It just kind of showed a rainy island and kind of in the storm. Nothing really there about Bowser's Fury, so we're going to skip over that and focus more on the fact that Mario 3D World, a Wii U exclusive, is also being ported over to the Switch. This isn't the first time this has happened either. I mean, Mario Bros. U also got ported over from Switch. Like Pikmin 3 also got brought over to Switch as well, and it was originally a Wii U exclusive. There's a lot of games that were very fun games on the Wii U, but really didn't get the benefit of a lot of people playing it because the Wii U kind of flopped. So it is kind of nice that this game is also getting that same kind of treatment. So I don't have much to say about it besides the fact that it was kind of foreshadowed with one of the Mario Maker 2 updates with some of the power-ups and everything, and the fact that hopefully we're going to be able to start playing it again. I think, that's really, there's not much else to say. It's pretty much a remake of Mario 3D World, so I don't think they really can mess it up, but also keeping my fingers crossed because it is Nintendo, and I'm guessing if they, I believe it has, correct me if I'm wrong, does it have online multiplayer? I think it does, right?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so keep my fingers crossed and hopefully the lag won't be too bad then, because Nintendo. Anyway, the other game I want to quickly mention is Bravely Default 2. I was a very, very big fan of the original Bravely Default, which some can kind of consider a Final Fantasy game because it's Square Enix and it's an RPG. But one of the things that's pretty cool about it is that the series is actually continuing on its legacy. It kind of had a little bit of a road bump when it went to Bravely Second, which if you're kind of more technical about the way that it's named, Bravely Default 2 is not the second game in the series. It is actually the third game. It went Bravely Default for the 3DS, then Bravely Second for the 3DS, and now Bravely Default 2, which is the third game. Yeah, kind of a pain. But one of the genius things about this game, and some of the things that I think is brilliant about this, is the gameplay. One of the common complaints about Bravely Second was that the story wasn't very good, but the gameplay was also stellar in there. And what's nice about Bravely Default is the big signature thing about this JRPG is the combat system, where you can either Brave or Default, where you can have up to 16 attacks, because there's 4 people in your party, and say you go Brave for all of them, you can unleash 4 attacks at once if you want to wipe out the enemy right away. But that comes at a caveat. If you do that and the enemy still survives, the enemy can also do that right back at you. So it's really cool. It's like a balancing act between, do you have enough Braves that you can take out this monster right away? So if you're going to play it super risky, or you can play it super defensive. I will say that this combat system, while it is genius, and it also is, it also has a nice perk of being compounded with the job system that it has to create like a dangerously addictive battle system. But the issue is that it's not a very easy combat system to learn, and that's one of the tough things because there is a big learning curve to it. I remember in the original Bravely Default, I think I got my ass kicked for like 5 hours initially playing the game until I started to understand the battle system. So while it's one of the best turn-based battle systems I've ever seen in a JRPG, it comes at a price where it's not the easiest to learn. So it's really cool because default pretty much means blocking, but also it can also store another Brave point. And if you use multiple Brave points, you can unleash multiple attacks. And certain attacks actually cost more turns because they're more powerful. So there's a little bit of a balancing act between, can you keep your party alive while you're doing this dance of one of my party members is going to be vulnerable this turn and the enemy might come with a big attack. It's kind of weird to explain, but if you look at the battle system and it doesn't intrigue you, then I would probably stay away from this game because that's the main incentive of playing it, is the battle system is really freaking good.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed playing the demo of this game. Yeah, it was cool. The thing I think I like about it too is like it makes grinding a little bit easier when you're able to like use, like your Brave to do multiple attacks at once, as opposed to like having to like wait for that back and forth the whole time. So it does make grinding a little quicker, which is good because I hate grinding in RPGs. Yeah, so the demo was fun. I loved the music in it. It definitely seems like it'll be fun. As someone who is a lot less knowledgeable about those games, I'm definitely intrigued by this one for sure. So
another thing that I do want to mention before I forget, I do not remember if Bravely Second had it, but the original Bravely Default did have random encounters, but it did something that was absolutely brilliant that I so wish that almost every new game does, and it lets you adjust the encounter rate to whatever you want it to be. So if you straight up do not like random encounters, you can completely turn them off. Oh. But the thing is, what?
No, I just said, oh, like that's awesome.
Oh, I thought you said, wow. I was like, wait a second. My bad on that. But anyway, no, it's super cool because like, if you don't want to face the enemies, you just want to go through with the story and whatnot, go ahead and do it. But it comes at a caveat: you're not going to get your job leveled up. You're not going to get your level up. Which kind of your level doesn't really matter in this game as much. Your job level is really the main thing that matters because you need to make sure to get the better abilities. But I never fully turned off the encounter rate until very late in the game because I was already pretty much at the max level because of the fact that the job system is so cool to experiment with and mess around with as it goes along. But the fact that you can adjust the random encounter rate completely is awesome. But also that also comes at a price where you still need to level up at some point. So either way, it is a very, very great game. I'm hoping there's a little bit more of an emphasis on the story for Bravely Default 2 because of the fact that it was kind of a step back with Bravely Second. But the combat of this game and the music, actually one of my favorite boss themes is the final boss of the original Bravely Default. So yeah, Square Enix, good music. If you like JRPGs, go for it. If you don't like turn-based JRPGs, stay away from it.
Yeah, that about sums it up. All right, so I'm gonna do the same thing as Nick. I have like 2 games that I'm gonna kind of quick fire, and then I'll save like the one that I'm a little more excited for, I guess, toward the end of the month. The first one I want to talk about is Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection. Me and this game have an interesting history because I've played through this game before. Obviously, I use save states because this game is an absolute bloody nightmare. If you've played it before, you know what I mean. Some people say that the original Ghosts and Goblins and the Super one that came after on the SNES are like 2 of the hardest games, period, that have ever been made. That is not an exaggeration. If you've never played one and you try it, I can guarantee you, unless you stand still, if you try to advance, you will die within the first 10 seconds. It is incredibly unfair, incredibly brutal, to the point where like that's what it's known for, being like a game that's practically impossible to beat. And so seeing a remake of it is kind of funny to me because, I don't know how many people were like dying to get back into that game. But it's cool because it's, I don't want to call it a hidden gem because people know about it, but it's definitely a game that not a lot of people have played before. And so kind of modernizing it and putting it out in like a 2021 market is kind of an interesting idea. Now with that being said, looking at the trailer, and it's hard to tell without playing, but it definitely does not look like they made it any easier, like at all. The enemies are still where they are. It seems like your abilities and how you move is exactly the same. So it seems like it is still going to carry that like same difficulty that the original one had. Just better graphics. I also noticed something that's kind of cool is the bosses are different. So in the original one, the bosses don't get very big. Like they are maybe like double your character size, but they're not that massive. But it seems like in the new Resurrection version, the bosses are like 10 times bigger. The way they move around on the screen is really cool. So it doesn't just seem like a copy paste with better graphics. It seems like they actually changed up some of the enemies in it. Like there's going to be some new content, some new level designs, things like that. So it looks really interesting if you're like a masochist and want to torture yourself. I don't know if there's going to be save states in it or not. I feel like if they really want to open it to a modern gamer market, that might almost be a necessity for something like that. But I don't know. We'll see about that. At least
generous checkpoints.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, to the point where it's not like if you game over, you restart the game.
Yeah.
I don't know what that's going to look like, but hopefully they do something, or else people are definitely going to be scared of this game. Who knows? We'll see. So that was my first one. And then the second game that I wanted to mention a little bit before I get into my big one later is Little Nightmares 2. I was a huge fan of Little Nightmares. If you saw it a long time ago, I streamed and beat this game on our channel. Little Nightmares is a really cool game. It's a horror game that's a lot like Limbo and Inside and those types of games where you're a small character moving around the world, and it's not a horror game in the sense of Outlast where something's popping out and scaring you and you scream. It's a horror game more in the sense that it's just a really disturbing world with just really disgusting and twisted characters. In the first game, some examples was like a chef that, like you would go into their kitchen and you would see like mutilated body parts. And the chef was like trying to steal you and cook you and eat you. And then there was like that area. Yeah. And then there was that area where you go into like a restaurant and like everyone is just hideous looking. Everyone looks like a giant demon. And there's just like tons of them and they're like 100 times your size. And just the way they move and act, it's like creepy. And I think that's the vibe that this game goes for. And this one seems like it is absolutely no different. It follows 6 again. So if you remember from the first game, she was in that game. You play as a new character. I believe his name was like Mono or Momo, if I remember right. But he's kind of going through that same journey. And 6 is right there with him. So that's kind of cool. But again, it seems like the setup and the vibe is the same where you're going to be encountering these really disturbing people. And it's the game is kind of like 50% puzzle. And then I don't know if I want to say platformer. You do like jump from platforms, but it's not like a hard platformer. I guess you could say it's like a run away from the enemy type of game where something is chasing you and you have to like navigate an obstacle course to stay away from them. But it is a lot of fun. Even if you're not big into horror games, I would still recommend it because I wouldn't call it scary by any stretch of the imagination. So I would say if you're into games like Limbo or Inside and stuff like that, this is just like a more disturbing version of those games. But it's certainly not extreme by any sense of the imagination. It is a cartoonish feel, right? It's not like realistic graphics. It's just creepy, and it has that creepy atmosphere. But it's a lot of fun if you're interested in those types of games.
When I always saw games like Inside being played, it seemed to be more of like an adventure, as in more of an introspective kind of game. Is that kind of feel that you're getting with this Little Nightmares 2, I believe, right?
Yeah, and actually it is kind of like that because if I remember correctly, these games don't really have any dialogue, like Little Nightmare doesn't at all either. It is just you going on that journey. In the first game, if you don't like pay deep attention, it really just does feel like you're escaping. You're trying to get out of this place that you were captured. So yeah, it is a lot like that, where it's a quiet game where you're kind of just exploring and, you kind of like pick up the pieces as you go,
Huh. Well, that sounds interesting. I mean, I'm not a big horror game player, but those kinds of games always have had me interested at least seeing somebody play them. So
for
sounds
sure.
Nice. All right, now for my game, my kind of big game that I have, and I've kind of been mentioning it here and there if you're not new to this channel, is Yeast 9 Monstrum Nox. And this time, don't worry, I have more information for you on this game, because before I was just like, it's just got an edgy vibe and I like the Yeast series and I thought it was going to be fun. No, what's really cool about this is the first game I played for the series was Yeast 8, and to me it was like almost a perfect action JRPG that really emphasized more platforming elements, more fast reaction gameplay, in more of an action combat setting and whatnot. So I thought to myself, all right, as long as they do more of the same, it's gonna be a success. So this game's already out in Japan, it just had to be localized in America. So I've already been listening to the music. I already adore the music. I've been listening to it for the past couple months already. And the couple things that are different about this game is before Adol kind of had free reign to go on his adventures. One of the things that Adol is pretty much known for in the Yeast series is for being a quote-unquote adventurer. And if you think of that sounding like a vague title, is because it pretty much means they can place him wherever the heck he wants and they'll be okay with it. So whatever story setting he'll be good in. Kind of a cop-out in my personal opinion, but I don't really care too much about that. But in this one, he actually goes into a new city. I believe they call it the prison city. I don't know its technical term. But they pretty much say, hey, listen, you've been on all these adventures. They've had consequences, and now you're going to face the consequences. So he pretty much, now instead of just being able to run around and explore, he's more of a fugitive. And one of the cool things about it is, with this game, with the characters you play as, and Adol in general, they're bringing more of a platforming emphasis into the game itself. So before, say for example, there was a ledge or like there's like a ledge over to the side that you couldn't get yet, but there's vines in the way. You had to find some climbing gloves, and you're able to get from point A to point B and continue on exploring the map. That's just an example from Ys 8. In this game, it seems to be way more freeform with the platforming, where you can straight up run up walls if you're a certain character and whatnot, or like teleport between places, which makes a lot of sense because now that he's a fugitive, he has to find other ways to get around. I think that's a really nice touch. Otherwise, pretty much they're just expanding on what they did what they have done right in the Ys series since the beginning, and it's pretty much just action combat, great music, and good party of likable characters. Really, one of my favorite characters from Ys 8 was Sahad, because he was pretty much a sailor that drank himself drank a ton and just was kind of a goofball. So he was just really fun to hear, because most of the time you'd expect like the stoic at-all and whatnot, and he doesn't really say much, but then you have Sahad, who's a scaredy cat when he sees a giant T-Rex running at him and whatnot. So they have a really good character dynamic and whatnot, and I would like to see that expanded on as well. But overall, this kind of game, it does have a very unique art style, so it will detract people from the art style alone. But because of the fact that I have greatly enjoyed both of the Ys games I've played so far, and this game seems to be going along the same route, I think I'm just going to enjoy this game no matter what. So I'm super psyched for this game to come out. I've been waiting for it for about a year. I'm just happy that it's being released on modern consoles, because Ys for some reason has always been like releasing on very weird platforms. Like I think Ys 8 before was like a Vita exclusive, and who the fuck bought a Vita? So it's one of those things. Yeah. I don't understand why they made those decisions.
Yeah, no idea. So question, I think I know the answer to it, but at least so when people watching this know. This is Ys 9. Do you have to play the other ones, or is it cool just to jump into this one?
You can pretty much jump into any of these games, is what I've learned, because it seems like every single story, technically, yes, it's all part of Adol's big grand adventure and whatnot, but for each one of them, it's always like a segmented story. Like for example, Memories of Celceta was all focused on that setting and whatnot. It didn't really bring in a lot. And Ys 8, yes, it does have some nice references to Memories of Celceta, but it's like a character who ended up being on the same boat or whatnot. To me, there's not from what I've been able to tell from the series, besides Adol and Dogi, which are pretty much your two main characters, you don't really have a big reoccurring cast that you have to play the previous games. So if you like the combat of this game and the music, and you just want to jump in and play these games, it does have that ability to be able to jump right in. Also, these games have really great map completion, which I'm always a sucker for in games. So you do not have to play the other games before to be able to enjoy this one.
Awesome. Well, it's good to know.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm gonna jump. Game. Yeah. I'm gonna jump into my final game. This is kind of my big one, and that's Persona 5 Strikers. I'm really excited to play this. Obviously, I was a huge fan of the original Persona 5. I think I don't know. Well, obviously, I've never played a game as long as the original Persona 5, that game being like 120 hours just to like barely beat the main story, let alone if you want to do anything else in those games. They can carry on for quite a long time, but it was an absolutely fun game. The characters in it were amazing. Since then, I've played a couple other Persona games, and they're all fun. I actually think some of them do some things better, but Persona 5 is still my favorite, and so seeing them kind of make an expansion to that game the way that they did for the other ones is kind of interesting, but they've never done one quite like this. For those of you that don't know, Persona 5 Strikers is a hack and slash game. It seems similar to what Dynasty Warriors has been like and what Hyrule Warriors has been like, but it's not exactly the same. So those games seem more like they're just, you go from level 1 to stage 2 to stage 3, whereas this one is definitely set up a lot more like an RPG. So it's not just, stage 1, Joker's going to go to this place and fight off these people. There actually is like a well-built story into it. There's different places you can go. There's like 6 different cities across Japan that you're going to explore in the game. So very similar to the original Persona 5 game, there is going to be some exploration. Now, I don't think it's going to be as in-depth, obviously. This is not like a main title game. So I don't get it in your head that you're going to be, like going to all the different markets and the restaurants and batting cages and doing things to like level up all your skills. I'm sure there will be some of that, but I highly doubt it will be to the extent that the actual Persona 5 is. But I have no doubt that those things will be in there. They've mentioned that you're going to be able to explore cities. They have the jail that you can visit and go interact with. And so there's a lot of like different environments in this one. For those of you that don't know, the story takes place after Persona 5. It takes place during the summertime, so at the end of Persona, well, I shouldn't spoil the ending of Persona 5, but you can imagine it was a fairly happy ending. And so as soon as you think, okay, like everything's fine for the characters, no, the whole point of this game is that summertime comes around, they're doing their thing, and then they get encountered by a detective who says, oh, you're going to do this thing for me or I'm going to throw you in prison. And it's like, okay, well, back at it again. And so their adventure is very similar, right? It's just more bad people doing bad things, taking advantage of people and throwing them essentially in a mind prison, I guess you could call it, because it takes place in another realm. And again, so it has to do with them like taking people's hearts and, the whole works that they've always done. So the idea of this game is very, very similar to the original Persona 5 game. I really feel like the major difference is just the gameplay of it. It's not going to be a turn-based RPG game. I don't know how personas will be used then. It does seem like, just looking at like screenshots and gameplay of it, that they will have a role in it. I just don't know as far as like combining them and leveling them up. That stuff, I don't know how it looks. It calls itself an RPG, so I'm sure there's going to be some sort of level up system. But those are some questions. Yeah. But overall, it just feels like a smaller hack and slash version of Persona 5. So I know some people aren't big fans of hack and slashes. I give it a pass because it's a spin-off game. So I'm like, okay, they've always done that with like the music rhythm game and the fighter games they've done. They've always like taken their games and twisted it for spin-off. So I'm okay with it. And it looks fun. So if you're interested in the story, it looks worth playing, especially if you're into hack and slash.
So I got a question for you on this one, Mike.
Uh-oh, I'm ready.
Do you know about if this is going to be... I cannot remember what the game was. Oh, yeah. Pretty much this is very similar in vein with what they did to Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, where took a very popular game in 2017 and turned a hack and slash game into it, because why the heck not? But do you know if this story is going to... since you said it happens in the summer afterwards, do you know if this story is actually like integral to like the main Persona 5 canon, I guess you want to say? Because I know Age of Calamity definitely was integral story-wise. I just wasn't sure about Persona 5 Strikers.
I would assume yes, that it would be considered canon, because, so for those of you that don't know too, and this goes for like everyone, Persona 3 and 4 had fighting games that came out with them. Persona 4 Arena came after Persona 4, and as far as I'm aware, that was also canon, which is weird because it was literally like a side-screen fighting game the way that like Mortal Kombat is. But that was like a story that came after 2, and that was considered canon. So I would imagine that this one would be as well. Whether or not people like accept that, I guess, is their own thing. But it definitely feels like it is like a spin-off sequel of sorts, right, to the original. I think is kind of the vibe that they're going for.
Yeah. And I mean, what is it? They came out with Persona 5 Royal, I think, within the last year or whatnot. So it does seem like it's going to be a while till they move on to Persona 6. But then again, I think the world of Persona 5 is so fascinating anyway. I don't really think they need to drop it and move on, because I think people are still interested in figuring out everything that happens in Persona 5. So I think it's nice that they keep expanding on a world that everybody is already still interested in, I would say.
Yeah, no, and they've always done, like, even the rhythm game they came out with, which was so odd. They definitely take their main game and then they milk it as much as they can. And then they'll do that thing with like the Persona Q games that like came out on like the 3DS, where they put like the little Persona games. Persona 6. Persona 6 is definitely, like, I would say 5 years off, for at least. They take their time on those games for sure.
Gotcha. All right, then. Moving on, I do want to give a couple honorable mentions. Pretty much the one game that Pat wanted to talk about, but he didn't really have a ton else to say. But so I believe it's Outriders. Yeah, Outriders. Outriders was Pat's game that he wanted to mention, but really the only thing that he was going to say that this is pretty much like Destiny, but he just hopes it turns out better. That's about it. So
it also got delayed to April, so.
Oh, it did get delayed?
Yeah.
Never mind. I won't worry about that. Thank you for letting me know. The other game that I wanted to just give an honorable mention to was Destruction AllStars. When we have these lists, some of the games don't really have a definitive date when it's going to be released. Sometimes it's the most speculated date, or they just say like February of this time. But I do believe this is a PS5 exclusive. I don't have a ton to say about it, but as of right now, we were talking about in like our looking back at 2020 video, there really isn't a big want from us right now to really want to upgrade to the next gen consoles. But it looks like that as if these games keep coming out, especially with PS5 exclusives that we are assuming they will, like the next God of War, the next Horizon and whatnot, we're assuming will be maybe not PS5 exclusives, but games to upgrade for the PS5.
Yeah.
So just to keep an eye out on these for the next gen consoles to see if it pushes more people that way. I know more people are going to get it. I'm still looking to get it at some point in the future, but at this point, it's just another exclusive that I feel like would be starting the trend, if anything. So just as an honorable shout out. But I do not have any other games. Is there anything you want to say, Mike?
Not really. I mean, the only thing I think that looks kind of cool is the Neo remasters, but I only say that because I never played those games. So I always wanted to, but I don't know anything about them. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I think we covered all the big ones. So yeah, I'm most excited for Mario 3D World.
That is true. We'll finally be able to play that. Finally. And hopefully we'll be able to figure out what the hell Bowser's Fury is. Nintendo, you said there's more information. Where is it? Also, for Travis, we want more information on Metroid Prime 4.
True.
But that's going to be it for us. So, honestly, it's not like the biggest month. It has a couple. This February is going to have a couple of games that I for sure am going to get, and I think Mike is going to get as well. Mm-hmm. So, if there's any other games that you know is coming out in February and you would like to tell us about, there's a comment section below. Type it out, and also compliment Matt on his hair, because we need more of those in the comment section, because none of you guys mentioned Matt's hair, and it's kind of sad.
Yeah, he's very insecure.
Anyway, that's going to be it. Insecure about the hair. So I hope you guys all have a lovely day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.